And those games, you also Lionhead released Fable 3. They cost tens of millions of closing on in total cost. Probably Halo, Call of Duty, and even Fable cost closing on, including marketing, $100 million. Now that is as much as any Hollywood film. And those bets, like those core gaming bets, are just going to get bigger. 5 years ago, someone said in the industry, oh, we've reached the maximum that we're going to spend on a computer game. $10 million. There, that's it. No one's going to spend any more money. And here we are, just a few years later, and we're now spending almost hundreds of millions of dollars. And you can be absolutely sure that that's going to continue. Why is it going to continue? Because if you spend, that's why I say it's a bet. Bet 100 million and you make $1 billion, that's a pretty good bet. One day, someone's going to bet 100 million and make 10 million, and that'll be a pretty bad bet. But essentially, it's still very, very much worthwhile. And audiences that are starting to come in after this year are new. They have no patience in us at all. They're not like the hardcore fans. If they don't like your game, they just leave it. So that's where we stand today. I thought what we'd do now is just go back and look at how we got here. And I'm going to just use the games I've developed to reference how we got to this point. Really, it all started for me, take a sip of water. It all started for me back in 1989. Now, has anyone heard of the first game that I made, a game called Populous? It's sufficiently, there's a few people. Oh, there's quite a few people. Yeah, that's good. Now, let me tell you the story about this. This is why the game called Minecraft, in some ways, is similar-ish to Populous, in that it's a world and you kind of, in Minecraft, you explore it and dig the land up, and kind of the same as in Populous. And the story of this game goes like this. I was a pretty awful businessman, to be honest with you. I was running this company, and I was, desperately trying to stop the company from going bankrupt. So I was, at that time, I was, a friend found a way for me to make money by shipping tins of baked beans to Iran. Not the most lucrative thing. But that's what I was doing. I mean, I literally was making no money at all. And me and a friend got together, and we have had this hobby of just playing computer games, really, basically. And, I was doing a bit of programming as well, and we decided to work on this game. Literally, we didn't really have an office. It was this horrible little room. I had no toilet. In fact, it had a sink used as a toilet. Not the most pleasant thing, as you can imagine. And I used to sit there programming away this game while my friend called Glenn used to draw the graphics. And I used to program for about 20 hours a day. There was an ashtray about this big, filled with cigarette butts on this side of me. There was a mountain of Coca-Cola cans on this side of me, and then behind me was this tower about this high of pizza boxes. And that's all I consumed. Cigarettes on the left-hand side, Coca-Cola on the right-hand side, pizza boxes behind. And I'd like to tell you that I had some wonderful idea for what this computer game would be, that I had some incredible foresight about what, the future of gaming would be. No, that's not true. I had no idea what game I was making, and this is what's so fascinating about mobile gaming and social gaming, is that there is no evidence. There's no history for someone to go around and say, that makes a successful game and that doesn't. And that was true in 1989. The genres hadn't been defined. There were some successes for sure, but there was so much innovation going on, so many things changing, just like today. And when we created this game, we took it round to the publishers, these publishers. And we knocked on the doors, and these publishers said, well, quite like the look of the game, but would it be possible that you could change the graphics so that the little people had guns and shot each other? And I kept saying, well, actually not. That's it's not what the game's about. It's about building land and looking after your little people. Another publisher said, well, that's very good. We won't publish that, but could you do a shoot 'em up for us, like a Space Invader shoot 'em up? Until eventually, and this is inspiration again for today, eventually we knocked on the door of a company called Electronic Arts. They published the game, and unbelievably, it became this massive, huge success. Just like the Minecraft story of the last year, exactly the same thing has happened. Suddenly, my publisher phoned me up and said, oh, I've got some good news for you. And I literally at that time, I couldn't even buy a pizza because had so little money. He said, I've got some good news for you. You're now a millionaire. And I said, what do you mean I'm a millionaire? He said, well, the sales figures for Populous has come out. It has sold, in the first week, it has sold almost 1 million units. And we've done the calculation, you're there. They didn't quite tell me it would take another 18 months before I got any more money. And me going to my bank manager saying, I'm a computer games developer, can you lend me some money to tide me over until my £1 million royalty check arrived? He just flatly didn't believe me, so I had to survive for another 18 months, mainly by stealing from my grandmother, but we won't go into that. So that's how I started in the industry, and that's how today, strangely enough, the new successful designers are being created. Now, what is so fascinating, someone can come up with an idea, they don't have to spend $100 million on implementing that idea, they can spend 50,000 euros or $50,000 at most. If they don't want to spend anything, they can work it on their own, and I've seen people like this. They can send the code to Apple or to Microsoft for XBLA, or to Sony, or to Nintendo. They can self-publish that, and they can make incredibly good returns. And I believe that's where a lot of this innovation come from. Now, instead of I did pay off my debts from the money I made from Populous, but instead I had this insane passion to have a company, to ambitiously make games that didn't exist. And so I pumped a lot of the money from Populous into Bullfrog. And we moved from the tiny office to a bigger office. Now I had a lot more space for Coke cans and pizza boxes, and I had a much larger ashtray. And we started to develop a game called Powermonger. This is a very interesting example for today's world, because at that point, insanely, for me, I started to become famous. Now, I was a very awkward and shy young man. You know, the thought of standing on a stage talking to people like yourselves made me feel sick. And then suddenly, releasing this game, you know, the press wanting to talk to me and television cameras pointed in my face, flying to Japan, and I mean, I won't go into the insane things that happened there, was really making me realize that the computer games industry, you know, was fascinating to people. And this game idea started forming in my mind called Powermonger. This is where, if I were to rate myself and be honest with you, I think I've had more failures than successes. Because Powermonger, this little, you can only see a little tiny picture of it there, it was this landscape, it had armies that moved across the landscape, that fought and battled each other, and it was so nearly an RTS game. It was so, it took just a couple more inventions to change it into an RTS game, and we would have predated Dune and Command and Conquer and all of those. But with all the press going on, with all me trying to run the business and me trying to recruit more people, I started to do the one thing that I should never do. I started to spend not 17 hours a day programming, but more like 10 hours a day, and then 9, and then 8, and then 7, and not really doing the one thing that a game designer must do. The golden rule, the one single golden rule, is play your own game. Again and again. Don't play it to test it, play it to enjoy it. Be your own critic. And so let me give you an example of what happened because I wasn't playing my own game. I'd had this really quite insane idea during one of the press interviews when I was being interviewed about my next game called Powermonger. And it was this. I've got these different armies on the landscape and they all move around. How am I going to, what would be a realistic way of issuing orders to those armies? And so I came up with this mad idea that these pigeons would fly out and drop off the orders to the little troops. I know it sounds completely mad. These carrier pigeons would fly in, fly down. What that meant was that this game was so slow and laborious because you sent an order to your army by clicking on the map, and then this pigeon used to fly out, take about 2 minutes to fly to the army, drop off the order, flap on back again. By the way, your pigeon could be shot down by another army where you'd have to wait for another pigeon to breed. It was just a mad game mechanic. It was so frustrating, and why I didn't just play the game and realize that what I wanted was to send the army from A to B, kill, destroy. That's what an RTS game is about.